Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast presented by Blue Water Climate Control. Check out Blue Water Climate Control online at their website, bluewaterclimatecontrol.com, or you can follow them on Twitter at blueh2o_climate for all of your HVAC needs. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Hell, I don't know where to start at. Where do you guys want to start at on this podcast? I guess we'll start first with some bow ties on the Jimmy Brumbaugh news. Um, uh, Austin,
What a run.
we talked about it on Sunday night. Um, this one surprised and caught everybody, off guard that the move was made now. But it certainly sounds like, I guess, that Jeremy Pruitt had been moving in this direction for a couple of weeks. He was not happy in the preseason with the D line. And as he said on Monday, there's some apparent philosophy disagreements. I think in coaching style might be the best way to do it. I don't know that it was a schematic disagreement. I think it was style of
Oh, it was
work.
coddling. It was coddling players, and Coach Pruitt's one that likes to push, maybe is a little hard on them at times, but he wants to try to push them to get the best out of them. And I think that Coach Brumbaugh was just different. And, I think he never got the chance to see that in the spring. Think about it, they had 2 days in the spring. They're all in T-shirts and shorts, before COVID shut it down. He never get to see it. The next several months, he works from home via Zoom. Think about it, 3 of his 8 months, he worked from home.
So if they'd have had spring practice, was Pruitt going to fire him after 15 practices and pay him $1.5 million to go away?
I think that he would have had a much better idea of what this was, but then all of a sudden he gets into getting to fall camp. This isn't like what I thought. Gets into games, and I think even on Saturdays, the difference of opinion on how to handle the defensive line and handle things on the sidelines was something that was tough to overcome for Coach Pruitt. And as I talked about in our video last night when we were breaking it all down, this is not like the whole notion was we're getting rid of Tracy Rocker because his inability to recruit. Well, they got no better at that position with Jimmy Brumbaugh. In fact, I think they might have even gotten worse because at least Rocker would get out of the way and let other guys, do the work for him. Brumbaugh was just constantly in the way and doing things behind the scenes, like, having current players, call, parents of recruits, cold call them. That's rough. When you have, a kid cold call, a mom or a dad out there. So in my estimation, the recruiting side of things was no better than a push from where they were at. We weren't there for, how he coaches and stuff. We've not been there. So I really can't speak on that more so than just what I've been told. But, the recruiting stuff, I can speak more on.
And wouldn't you say, if they did have a spring practice, that Jeremy would have at least had the opportunity to, meet with him in his office and say, hey, this is how I want you to do things here.
Yeah, agreed.
I need to let you know if you think you can do that or not before we get to this point. And also, I'd say flipping on that game tape and seeing the second half and what they got out of the defense and against Kentucky, I would imagine if Jeremy was on the fence, that probably
it was the final nail.
I'm not talking about execution. I'm talking about effort. And you hate to question that about kids, but that did not look like a team that was laid it all on the line after halftime.
Coach Pruitt came out and said, they had this one of the most spirited practices they've had, on Sunday in a long time. It's easy for Coach Pruitt to say, and talk to a couple of people on Monday night who are, innocent bystanders who are able to be at practice. And they both brought it up, had no clue that Coach Pruitt had even said it, and talked about like the different energy level at practice last night versus the last couple of weeks. So again, we weren't there, but just based off of just talking to a couple of people, it sounds like, for at least one practice, they had a little bit of juice out there.
So what do we think how this is going to work with Jeremy Pruitt coaching those guys? he going to run the meeting rooms. He going to run everything with those guys. When I mean, admittedly, on Monday he talked about some individual time he had spent in other positions and with other guys to try to help them get going. So is I mean, he's hands off on linebackers. He's hands off in a secondary that's obviously had some issues, and he's all interior defensive lineman all the time as the head coach.
Well, the funny thing is he's been known to coach the secondary with DA up until this year, and from talking to several people, it sounded like he was helping Niedermeyer with the linebackers some as he kind of brings him along as a member of the defensive staff. Now all of a sudden you're right. He's going to just go and coach the defensive line, and Niedermeyer's got it all on his own at linebackers. DA's got everything in the secondary on his own. DA could handle the secondary, but I mean, Niedermeyer's still a young coach who, again, while he may have worked as a GA at Alabama, had not run a room at the linebacking room at Alabama. He's run a tight end room here. So it is an interesting dynamic. Don't you think that they've got enough bodies though around there, whether it be a Kendall Moorhead or somebody else that's played on the defensive line, that they can help during practice?
Oh, I'm
I
sure
think they can help, but it's not
Right.
the same. Wouldn't you say, However? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, I'm assuming that instead of going into a secondary meeting room before practice to talk about something in split coverage safety, split safety coverage work to clean a few things out, or pop it into the inside linebackers room. I mean, he's got to be in the defensive line meeting room the entire time because there's not anybody else to run the meeting. I mean, somebody could come out there and help them go through some individual reps and individual skill stuff. And I don't think that's a problem for Pruitt to do that during individual stuff. And then obviously they all go together as team. I mean more from a meeting standpoint, film and all this stuff. I don't know how much help they have there from a GA standpoint at that specific position. Some other positions, they have some guys in quality controls who have experience. I mean, Kevin Simon can certainly watch linebacker tape with any linebacker that he wanted to, but I don't know if they've got anybody who can run a position group room other than Pruitt. So I guess he will do that every day because it doesn't appear like he's going to hire anybody anytime soon. This is going to be a hire that's going to be made after the season is over, and he kind of could figure out over the next few weeks what's going to be available to him or who's going to be available to him.
Well, and that's the thing is like the people that he could hire. Everybody's going to bring up Tosh Lupoy, Bo Davis, Lance Thompson's another name.
LT.
All those guys, I don't think could come back into this league for it till at least the end of the season. Like every one of them, I'm almost positive that Bo Davis it can't come into this league until after this current season. Same thing with Tosh, and I don't even know if when Lance can come back in. But there's a reason he didn't go with Lane to Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I mean I think Tosh is pretty happy in the NFL. Now he may not have a job in the NFL, because of what's going on with the Falcons. But, from his family situation, he's got some young kids. I don't know that he wants to commit to, life back in recruiting. I think you talk to most people who have been in the college game and going to the NFL, they don't really miss the year-round recruiting stuff that you have to do now. They kind of like the off seasons in the NFL compared to the off seasons or lack of off season in the college game.
Well, I talked to Zach Azzani quite a bit, and Zach is in year 4 of being in the NFL. Only half the NFL teams have a coaching pension. Zach's been fortunate enough to be with the Bears for 1 year and then the Broncos for 3. And yeah, if you can get one of those teams that has a coaching pension and you can get 5 years in, you start getting a pension. I mean, like that. Why would you not want that? Because it is an easier life, and there is no recruiting, and it is much more scaled back. And you get paid well. And again, if you can be fortunate enough to coach for one of those franchises that does the coaching pension and end up with that when you retire, that's a heck of a gig.
I mean, the recruiting thing though is, you basically get a couple weekends off in July. That's just I just think there's no comparison.
Yeah, and during those 2 weeks off that you have in July or those few weekends, you better be calling the recruits or you better be texting them. I mean, you can't take a day off from dealing with recruits if you're going to be an effective recruiter. So we'll see what Jeremy Pruitt does at the end of the year. And we'll see how it works with Jeremy Pruitt coaching those defensive linemen not just this week, but coaching them for the rest of the season, and how he manages his time and how much production he can get out of that group, which obviously he didn't feel like was producing nearly at the level he thought they should be producing at, which is why he's now coaching them. And Jimmy Brumball is no longer at the University of Tennessee. All right, let's go to the other question that's on everybody's mind, and that's the quarterback question. I didn't think there was any way leaving Neyland Stadium on Saturday that I didn't think that JG would never play again. I thought that was too strong to say something like that. But I didn't see any way at that point that they would trot him back out there as the starter against Alabama. But Rob, Jimmy Pruitt didn't guarantee that on Monday, but he certainly made it pretty clear that that would be a direction he would be leaning as of right now. At least that's the way I interpreted his Monday
That's
comments.
the way I left the press conference too. I mean, with two key words, what was it? You don't want to put him on a shelf, and I mean, I forget what the other one was, but I mean, he seemed to like, take some steps to, make sure that he put it out there. He didn't think it was all Jarrett's fault on what happened on Saturday, but I 100% agree with you. I didn't think there was any way that that there was a chance he would start against Alabama. Now, if I had to bet, I would say that seems likely. And I don't think they have a good answer at quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that.
And I think that's why. And I think that's why JG may start on Saturdays, because they don't have any answer at the quarterback position. I mean, based on what he's done the last 6 quarters, Austin, he's still your best answer. That tells you don't have an answer in that room at this point in time. Now, you could say Harrison Bailey's not ready, which I don't disagree with that notion. But the other 2 guys have been on your campus for a year, and they both played in conference football games. And they haven't pushed, and they're not in line as people you think you can play when your starter struggles the way Jerry Garantano has struggled the last 6 quarters of football.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Nothing you guys just said. I can't argue with any of it. I mean, I get where the fans are. The fans are done with him. The fans are ready to move on to Harrison Bailey. I think they're a bit naive to think that, if you saw him throw those passes, on Saturday, I mean, he threw a jump ball to Weidman who went and made a play. And then everything else was, to me, no better than what Rob, Brent, or myself could have done, just, given the ability to not get hit and mutilated by a linebacker.
I don't think fans appreciate how few live reps he's had since the season started, because, I mean, he missed all that time in camp. He's 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. And once you get into game week and you're getting ready for that week's opponent, the 3rd string guy is an afterthought.
Yeah, I mean, and what I mean by that a minute ago was by the fact that Brent, everything looked like that it was moving real slow with him. Like he was having to analyze everything, because again, as Rob just pointed out, he's not been out there and the live bullets are flying. And no offense to last Sunday's scrimmage, but I mean, he had an offensive line of Dane Davis and Parker Ball. I mean, it's not like he was back there behind Trey Smith and the starters going against the starters. That it's real football, but it's not the same. It's moving at a little different pace. So I just think it's unfair to him. It was. I always thought it was going to be unfair to him.
I think, and Brent's made this point a lot. I think it's unfair to him to start him against Alabama. It is on Saturday. Now, I certainly look to play him at some point in time, but to run him out there in the first quarter, I think that would be unfair.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that movie too many times. I mean, you saw it with Jared. I don't think it helped Jared that his first start was against Alabama. He got the ever living crap beat out of him that day. I'm not saying that that's the reason why Jared struggled with any consistency his entire career, because I don't think that's fair to say. But I don't think that game helped him his freshman, his first year and his first action being played there. I don't think it helped Marcus Tatum as a freshman, Rob, to get thrown into that game against Alabama, when he was clearly not ready and they didn't have any other answers. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. And is that the fairest thing to do, to put that kid? Some people say, well, you're going to lose anyway. I understand that, but you don't want to lose or set back any development of Harrison Bailey. And some would say, well, that means he's not mentally tough. I'm not suggesting any of that being the case. I just don't know what this benefit of throwing him out there as the starter in this game is. I don't know how much he can learn or grow from it if he's just completely shell shocked and then all of a sudden he can't do anything and you're taking him out of the game and now you got all this other stuff going on. If he's not ready, I just don't think you need to play him as a young player because you got to think about that one much more long term, as potentially being your guy that you've got to develop and get ready to play. Now on the flip side of that, I will say this. The notion that he didn't know anything about the Kentucky game plan, I'm not buying that one either. Was he not in quarterback meetings last week? I mean, and I don't want to pick apart every word that Coach Pruitt said on Monday because it's irrelevant in a lot of cases. But the idea that he didn't know anything about the Kentucky game plan makes no sense to me because he was in quarterback meetings all week long where that they talk about getting ready to play Kentucky. So I don't think that one makes a whole lot of sense either. So I think we're all in agreement right now as of Tuesday morning. We think it's going to be Jared.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried somebody out, but just trying to parse Jeremy's comments on Monday, that's the way I took it. And for the record, I would do something else just to be doing something else. And again, you're not going to win that game with 2.
Just to give the illusion that you're trying.
Yes. Just to show that I was searching for answers. And I mean, and then at the end of the day, if Shrout goes out there and throws 3 picks and has a fumble, or Maurer does the same, and you say, see, I told you.
I mean, I think that was their justification when Shrout threw the pick Saturday. It was like, see, they put JG right back in. I mean, Jarrett is, I think they're going to be the starter. If Tennessee didn't start him, I think they would start Maurer. I don't think they'll start Shrout.
I don't disagree with you, and I think if Maurer had, A, hadn't missed all of fall camp, and B, had put himself in a better situation early on, and you had some trust in him, I think he fits a lot of what they want to do in terms of what he can do with his own read and different things like that to fit their running backs and to fit some stuff that they could do with the RPO game. But he hasn't been ready, so we'll see what happens there. Let's say it is Jared. Okay, how do you manage it? I mean, clearly they did not want him.
You pipe in good crowd noise that cheers when he takes the field.
Well, he's going. I mean, he and Pruitt are going to get booed loudly on Saturday if that's what happens. But let's get past that and get to the point where, I mean, they didn't have any trust in him throwing the football to start the second half or really in the second half. So how do you manage your offense with him on Saturday? I mean, are you
Lane Kiffin versus Florida, 2009?
Just hand it off and try to eat the clock and go to the house.
Try to get out, try to get out losing 28 to 6 if you can, instead of having Devontae Smith have 3 of the top 10 plays on SportsCenter Saturday night.
I think you slow it down, but I mean, I think you still got to try to score. Alabama's given up points this year. I know they shut Georgia out in the second half, but if you go back and you watch some of the plays in that game, Georgia had guys running open in the second half. Stetson Bennett just didn't see them. So, Jarrett may not see them if that's the case Saturday. But the point is, the defense is still susceptible to giving up yards and points. So, I think if you're Tennessee, you slow it down, but you got to slow it down with the notion, hey, we're still trying to get in the end zone here.
All right, let me ask this question. I don't disagree with you. Got both of you there. I think you got to slow it down. I don't think playing up tempo helps you. But I mean, you can't come out and be afraid to let your quarterback throw the football. If you're going to start Jared, you got to go out and run your offense. And you got to throw the football and you got to play the game. If you don't, you need to be starting somebody else in the game. Period. At the quarterback position. I'm kind of done talking about the freshman wide receivers, but I mean, do we think there's going to be any movement there, Austin, or is this hey, we need wait till Arkansas game, get through an open date, have an open date, full week of practice to help them further understand what to do, and then you start playing those guys?
I think the best way you can help Jared if you're going to start him is to play some of those young kids. Again, you don't have to play them all. You don't have to play them all together. But to trot out, again, we've talked about this for multiple weeks now, to trot out Cedric Tillman, to trot out Brandon Johnson, to trot out a split out tight end Jacob Warren and Josh Palmer, they're just going to take number 5 away and say, okay, can these other 3 dudes can they get separation? And the answer has been routinely no. Brandon Johnson's playing good, but I mean he's making tough catches where he's getting, taking big shots and big hits. They need some different athleticism in there at wide receiver. And if that's just saying, okay, Jimmy Holiday, you're going to learn the Z. This is what you do. We're going to slow it down. Jimmy, you're going to run a 9-yard dig and going that way, then that's what they need to do. I mean, like they've got to find a way to get more athleticism out there.
And if you get this hand signal, you run a 9-yard out instead.
Yeah. I mean, like, for those people not able to see Rob, you should see the hand signal.
It's elaborate.
It's a joke. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything Brent just said. I mean, like they've harped on it, and we got to play them, but then they get to Saturday and they just don't have trust. Well, when you got a quarterback that throws it late anyway, to me, you might want to get guys that get a little more separation. That way, when he throws it late, then it actually may be on time instead of behind him.
I mean, if you're not going to slow it down and do 3 yards of cloud of dust and snap it with a second on the clock every time, then I think your best chance to put points on the board is the Auburn 2018 game plan and hope that, Palmer or Weidman or, can go up and beat somebody at a jump ball. But Tennessee, I don't mean to be negative, Nancy, but Tennessee's not going to win this game with Cedric Tillman playing 40 snaps. Why not play Malachi Weidman 40 snaps and try to, speed up his development?
Well, and that was going to be my
Hubbard, you had one of the best points of the week, I thought, in the 3-2-1 when you talked about the interception. You got Tillman wide, you got Warren split out kind of in the slot there. Why is Kentucky? I mean, why are they not jumping the out route?
Yeah, I mean, it strikes the fear. It strikes the fear in no one. I mean, that just the personnel in that formation. They're not going to backpedal. They're going to squat on whatever because they're not worried about getting beat anything behind them. Plus, they had safety help over the top. Let me ask it this way then: how would you handle the Alabama game? Rob, you said slow it down, play it like Kiffin, try to play it close, and sort of get out of there, which is certainly a way you could do that. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Do you also look at it and say, hey, look, we're trying to build for the final 5 games of the season. Okay, we're trying to go 4-1, 5-0, 3-2, whatever down the stretch of the season after the open date. And do you use this game to get ready for that by playing these young guys, by throwing Omari Thomas in there more, by playing Javante Spraggins more than a series, take him out of series, put him back in a quarter later? I mean, do you line up and play him at guard and say, hey, big boy, time to grow up. Let's get ready for 2 weeks from now. And do you play? I'm not saying youth movement that you shelf all your veterans, but do you play some of those guys knowing, what, we might get beat 40 points, but we're trying to get ourselves ready for 2 weeks from now for a trip to Arkansas and on down the rest of the season?
Well, it's based off the fact that we think Carvin may play some, but he's still not going to be fully healthy, so he's not going to play a ton. I would play Javante Spraggins all day and all night at guard and play Kate at tackle. Darnell wouldn't see the field. Right now, he's just not playing well enough. That don't mean you scrap him as a lost cause or a bust or any of that stuff. But right now, in this current situation they're in, they just can't afford to put him back out there. Like that's the way I think. And Wanya ain't playing much better. So
well, and if Wanya can't go or is playing any good, you might play Kate out there at left and have to play Darnell at right.
Great.
Maybe.
Or Kayron Calvert.
Or Kayron Calvert,
I don't think Wright slammed the door on Calvert getting a shot.
Yeah. But again, back to my question, do you play it that way? Do you say, you know what, we may get beat, we'll try to slow it down and keep the score down a little bit, but we're going to roll out the guys we think that are close. Now, you're not going to put a guy out there that you don't think is close to being ready. You may play Harrison Bailey some late in the game, but I'm talking about starting him. But do you take some of these other guys? Okay, maybe McDonald's not ready, Austin, but Bryson Eason gets more, play, and you play some of these guys at all positions in an effort to build for November.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, remember, Hubs, they always remember what you do in November.
They're going to remember what this team does in November. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it lines up to getting your stuff together and getting to 5-5, 6-4, or not, and then really things spiral out of control at that point. So yeah, I don't disagree. I think you've got to change something, and if you're not going to change quarterbacks, you better change something else. And I think that may be a talent infuse of young players who have a lot of upside.
I mean, I agree with you 100%, Hubbard. I couldn't emphasize it enough. I mean, I'll be surprised if Tennessee keeps this game within 3 touchdowns. I know the line's a little lower than that. And I almost think that's a reflection of Las Vegas thinks that Alabama just won their biggest game of the regular season and we'll have a little letdown this week. But I give those again. I don't treat it like a scrimmage, but I find a way to get those guys we're talking about some significant snaps.
All right, last 2 things are out the door. I got a recruiting question for Austin here at the end, but before that, what do you do in the middle of the football field?
Whew. How many slants and deep ends do you think Smith and Waddle are going to get this week?
I know this. I mean, Terry Wilson went 9 of 10. He went 9 for 10 in the middle of the football field Saturday.
We already know they're going to get their hands up. They're going to bat those passes down. There's going to be picks. I mean, that's going to happen. Jeremy said that. Hey, what do you say though if that actually does happen? If they coach him up and they start batting balls Saturday, is that not an indictment against Jimmy Brumbaugh?
Well, sure, but I mean, they've got to stop giving up leverage on the inside. I mean, that's a huge problem that has been a problem all year long. That technique wise, they're just not doing anything well to prevent the middle of the field.
If I, defensively, if I'm Tennessee, I do what Kentucky did Saturday. I drop everybody and make them dink and dunk and make them take it longer to get down the field.
Yeah, I think the problem with that against Alabama though is if you do keep your safeties back like that and that their offensive line is good enough.
Najee
Harris is going to cash. He's going to average 11, 12, 13 yards a carry.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but they have to get the middle of the football field fixed for the month of November, without question, because it's the easiest throw for quarterbacks to make, and if they don't fix that, then Felipe Frank's going to have a field day throwing a slant. Everybody's going to throw it till they stop it,
and they haven't seen a big time quarterback yet. And they're getting busted.
Yeah, you're right.
That's makes it even more alarming.
Luckily, in this league, there really is no such thing as a big time quarterback.
Now, his kid this week is playing. He's playing his way on the NFL draft for sure.
Yeah, he's big time.
Good, yes.
Yeah, he's good. Kyle Trask at the end of the year across the middle of the field is pretty good. That's where he likes to throw the football. So there's a couple of them out there. But you're right, Rob. They haven't played a great quarterback yet. They've made some average quarterbacks look really good in the first part of this football season. All right, wrapping up out the door. Also, want to ask you about recruiting. Everybody wants to know, the last 2 weeks you get shellacked in the second half of Georgia. This is an embarrassing loss. What's the impact on recruiting? How big of a deal is this how big of a blow is this to recruiting for the current class, the finishing out this class, and the future with guys like Ty Simpson, the guys like, Walter Nolan, all these guys? As
of right now, there's no impact on the current class.
Okay.
I think you still have to worry about a guy like Terrence Lewis because he is down in South Florida. Miami's having a decent year. I know they lost to Clemson, but they're not going to go away in that recruitment. And but the good thing for Tennessee is who's your main competition for several of your big time targets? Auburn. Auburn looks like a hot mess right now too, and they play Ole Miss this weekend. If they lose that game and they're 2-3, their last 5 games are against A&M, LSU, Alabama, and then Tennessee and Mississippi State, none of which I think they would be favored in or more than a coin flip in. At the most, I think they would be the underdog in a lot of those games. So, again, I think that your main competition for Dylan Brooks, for Cody Brown, for, Rock Taylor, any of those type of players that are, Auburn's in on, the best thing going is the fact is Auburn's not very good either. And so I don't think the impact in this class is that big of a deal. The impact on the 2022 class with Ty Simpson. Ty obviously wants to see Tennessee, move the ball better offensively. He wants to see them, look a lot more different than what they do. And I get it. You look at, Alabama, you look at Clemson. Those are the main two, the main two opponents that you're battling there. And really, it's Clemson. They're scoring 70 points, and Alabama's got the longest streak in college football history of being able to score at least 35 points in a game. Tennessee just looks different. So I think there is an impact on him. I still think Tennessee is in a good spot, but Tennessee can ill afford to go in the tank here down the stretch. They've got to get the ship righted. They've got to get it turned around, and offensively, they've got to show a spark.
That's
Then
awesome.
again,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you don't know what Jared will look like in his 6th year that might turn the tables for Tennessee with Ty Simpson. Could be a completely different picture next year.
The number of people that just slammed their hand into their steering wheel, turned down the radio, or just dog cussed you at this point in time, Rob Lewis, is probably off the chain at this point with that comment. But on that comment, let me tell you about our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. If you're in need for a new HVAC system, HVAC system, you need to give them a buzz. If you have an issue, you need to give them a buzz. If you need to have a tune-up, you need to give them a buzz. They can come out and take care of all your needs. They're going to do the right repair the right way the first time. And again, if you just need a tune-up and make sure everything's in good shape for the winter, it's a perfect time for you to come out, for them to come out and take a look at your system and tell you exactly what you need and get you set up and ready to go. You can give them a call today at 865-299-2290. You can book an appointment online. For more information about Jeremy and his crew, go to bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. And again, you can book it online by simply picking a day and time that works for you at their website, or give them a call or check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.